All right, ladies and gentlemen, I got myself a new microphone, and this one's fucking $700. All right, this is the end game microphone. It's gonna arrive at some point. If you watched Avengers Endgame, you know exactly what I'm talking about. As a wise woman once said on TikTok, the reason why women go after top 20% or whatever is because of natural selection. And obviously, that is the biggest bullshit you can possibly come up with. Out of all the ideologies to adopt, natural selection is, the biggest insult, but women tend to do that. Women tend to pick up the biggest mindfuck as a justification to the point where it almost exposes them for how ridiculous they are on social media. We actually don't see the part of TikTok exclusively, which we should, exclusively of just stupid women. Women being stupid and being shamed, and all of a sudden, men's loneliness crisis would cease to exist. I swear to God. Most of the problems that we face in the world are one weird step away from being solved. But obviously, there's a war raging on that, first of all, prevents us from seeing the solution. Cough, cough, polygons, by the way. Polygons. I see the solution from polygons, but no one else sees it. What's wrong with you people? And despite the solution being very simple, it might take years upon years for something to actually crack. Unbelievable. So no, there's a quick debunk to like a lot of things. Oh shit, that one over there. If love does not exist, reality collapses. Bye-bye. Because without love, destroyers of reality come to be. Destroyers of reality could get toned down, basically, calmed down, and potentially even tamed if you give them love instead of hate. Otherwise, they will show their destructive powers just because they're being challenged. Right? You can still, stop them from destroying reality. But reality, without love, is gonna collapse like a fucking balloon. Popping. So be very careful. Luckily for you guys, social media technically is saturated with love, with, again, charitable works. Most of it is free, but, they will try and extract money from you. That's not a very loving thing. In fact, most of us hate big corporations making profits while we get to struggle. Like, what's going on? What is this greed epidemic? Well, apocalypse is doing its thing. And maybe, it feels inevitable. Something has to give, something has to collapse. Someone has to find the ultimate way out, the exit strategy from this burning building that is capitalism right now. Definitely doesn't seem to be my duty to find the exit. I'm just gonna find the exit when it's invented very, very quickly and tell you about it. But someone else has to do it. Probably God himself has to find the exit out of the stupid capitalism. Just jump on board on the next thing. So while I'm explaining capitalism, capitalism is fading away into a solved state. There's still going to be a lot of people using capitalism. You can see like half of the world for 1 year, then a quarter of the world for another year. Then there's going to be like stuck nations, but it's continue shrinking. Even like North Korea might be like only 50% communistic anymore. But there's going to be countries that lag behind, and we'll be able to see it very, very clearly of what even worse things that can possibly happen under capitalism. Every country individually has to like make the jump. Or at least regions have to make jumps altogether, right? I split the world into 4 main regions and like 3 secondary regions. I don't know about these ones. They almost like doomed to lag behind, it feels like. It's like a little demonic. A little wanna just like stay in the previous thing just for the thrill. But these regions should level correctly instantly, but not. We don't know where. That's the only question. We don't know which region's supposed to evolve. Capitalism will be gone one day. Is it worth talking about? Because I was willing to talk about like fantasy. How to fuel fantasy. This is one of those skills you need to learn in order to survive capitalism. And again, any amount of survival, I mean, call it natural selection or whatever. There's nothing natural about capitalism in general. That's why it's a survival state. Capitalism does not introduce nature. Capitalism introduces human nature, which is not, it's not natural. Okay, we're inventing a lot of things, and a lot of things can go haywire. A lot of things can out-manipulate the system more than we bargained for. Right? We invent potato chips, and they fucking spread like cancer. We create an energy drink, and they consume people's attention like crazy, right? We invent stupid shit. We invent stupid brain rot, and it's gonna suck people up. That's it, right? The more stupidity, the more effective and influential stupidity we invent, the more the stupidity earns money. The more it grows, basically, and the more it tries to create even more scenarios where stupidity earns more money, right? It gets out of control. I still think trying to appeal to children on YouTube is a shameful behavior. Anyway, we can call it stupidity vortex. I found capitalism to be relatively damaging to me. So my fantasy is that it's over. Alright, and I can predict exactly when it's over. But the funny thing about fantasy is, like, how much of that is made up? How wrong could I possibly be? And I have to call it fantasy because no one's gonna back you up. Alright? One of the reasons why fantasy works in capitalism is because freedom, and you're also pretty much on your own. You can do whatever you want, but they can also do whatever they want. But fantasy is cheaper. Alright, you don't have to invest money for travel tickets. You don't have to buy the actual Monopoly. You can just build one. Basically implying that fantasy is very close to artistry, where you can find creative solutions to things in general. Anyways, I don't know exactly how it's gonna go down, but when enough stupidity is on the table, I highly suspect people will just abandon capitalism because it's fucking ugly. it's ridiculous at some point. They will snap out of it because they realize what kind of principles are behind the thing that, now feeds evil. Feeds more evil than good. The good part is to figure out capitalism as much as possible. The bad part, evil people figure out capitalism and take much greater advantage as a result, resulting them, most importantly, and why we hate millionaires, most of the evil people, they just loot money, right? So as long as we value money in general, we will be robbed. That's why it's so important to discard capitalism. We discard the importance of money. It's the first thing we would do, collectively. And then you would understand like how much hatred money is fueling nowadays, and you would be in just much greater hurry to get rid of your innate focus to money. It's devastating. There's a lot of beliefs people hold, and they don't account for other things. They don't account for evil generally. There is one thing I actually learned pretty fast is, like, small people can gain benefits, but millionaires gonna get more benefits than anyone else. They will avoid more taxes for no good reason. Millionaires will still cling on to their money. At the end of the day, they're not kind. They're not filtered through a lens. And people who are not kind, if they could leave, they better leave. They better. There's a lot of that has to go down. People will all collectively understand how to get rid of, how to dump capitalism, how to be upset about it. And I think we're at this breaking point for sure. All that should happen in the end is cut the cords of, that fuels our problems. This feels natural when you think about it. Technically, I lived my whole life chasing fantasy because the real thing was too far away. And unfortunately, for this like man loneliness thing, that's all you have in the end of the day. Women are not gonna fucking be competent enough, is what it is the problem. They're not gonna be competent enough to be picked up. They actually want relationships like everyone else, but they just don't know how to look for those relationships. Often they just like give themselves an arrogancy boost to the point where it's just like, fuck it, I don't care. 50-50, there's no natural selection. There's 50% of women, 50% of men. Where's the problem, right? Everyone can match at some point. Well, there's missing competence of ways to match as well. Again, women, they do show up on dating apps, but the dating apps don't show up in reality. They show up in greed, I guess. To be within reality's bounds, you still have to be made out of love, and you have to function, you have to have competence. While those things are missing, people still try to be competent to each other. See, they might not be competent to you personally, but they want to look competent generally, which fuels fantasy, right? People want to lie on social media is the way to describe it, like everyone else describes it. Everyone wants to look good and avoid shame. unless you're not afraid anymore to receive shame, or you can't possibly receive shame anymore. Loneliness is kind of below shame unless you're kind of still comfortable with it anyways. You're comfortable with nothing. It's like, okay, oh well. That's why it's so difficult to survive fantasy. Fantasy keeps you alive, generally speaking. Otherwise, you would lose your fucking mind. Because you constantly see things that other people have, you want to also have. The moment internet and computers were invented, the moment capitalism did its thing, you were also able to pirate games and everything for free. You still had free access to everything at the same time. Not everywhere, blatantly, but yeah. If you hide your tracks, you had access to just general culture without going to theaters and buying discs that games were in. There was a pirating option of some sort. Even secondhand pirating was an option. I remember going to what I still know as a competent place to repair computers, to buy computer parts, right, on the spot. Competent, however, I wasn't able to buy a mouse. Computer mouse, that shit's on another scale of breakage, basically. You have to actually level up competence to just, more regional, higher level region, not just like knockoff region. So bought it from Amazon and my mouse seems to fucking function for once. Crazy, I know. Like fully function. Never been done before. One piece breaks one way or the other. Usually the middle mouse button breaks. But anyways. So these guys had a catalog of games and they probably pirated those games. Right? And they burn the game into a disc. They just have a huge collection. They burn it into a disc so you get to play it. I have a collection. There's another thing, by the way. There were like demo versions running around. There was a lot of stuff burnt into discs in general. If you like bought into like magazines. I actually dusted off that collection and I placed it aside because it's quite a bit nostalgic. Some of the games were kind of interesting. Apparently Hot Wheels was a game. Still is. Back in the day, I also had friends, right? Women, not so much. Women were a fucking mystery of like, where are the women, actually? Right? I was hanging with the boys. But women did not really exist. And when women existed, they would just fuck around. They do a bunch of nonsense things that made no fucking sense. It's like, let's meet. Let's meet up. And they just don't care. They basically show paranoia. They show every imaginable mental health problem that you can think of. They throw that shit at you like projectiles. Women don't care. Okay, they're just not normal. Obviously, when you want to meet a woman, you're subject to scrutiny that they might not like you or whatever. But that's not the fucking problem, right? The real problem is that you make yourself unlikable and you don't have any chances of success. Women, again, screw themselves over very quickly. So, it is actually a very, very good indication or a warning. You have to go back into the past and place things down. Dig out the nostalgic moments of shit that happened, right? Because very likely you're gonna first of all discover a lot of incompetence, and then you also discover that, well, you were still struggling to build a fantasy world. How about that? So instead of chasing women, which would drain your time, but eventually there could be some success. You know, they will still pay attention to you, but they also want to like shame you as much as possible because they have this mental illness lodged in their fucking heads. They have to shame you. They have to talk about you over and over again until something cracks and they. I'm not sure how the process works, but something has to happen as they talk about you. Something bad has to happen to them for them to stop and be like, okay, fine. We can do your thing now. I've been talking about you, but I guess we can do your thing. See, that's the weird thing. Like, it's a very replaceable thing. Like, if they're willing to talk about you, they care about you. If they care about you, they should be doing something else instead, right? And they do give you an opportunity, relatively speaking, to do something else. If you do nothing, they're not gonna care to do things with you, generally speaking, right? That's the weird dynamic I feel like I wasn't able to crack into. Everyone were able to dismiss me as if I'm doing nothing until I wrote a book, right? That's the magical thing, the twist. Until I wrote a book. And all of a sudden, they have to try and dismiss of like, man, there's like grammatical errors going on. Oh, wait, that's it? I don't know. It's like, oh, you don't care how she feels. That sort of nonsense. The only natural selection that can possibly happen is picking the bad guys. The broken people. Alright? The broken people get picked up because nothing happening in their lives. They're the fucking gossip queens, basically. The bad guys, they might be smart, but they also get picked up because they have nothing to do in their own lives, in their own spare time. They get entangled in female business way too quickly, and they get married. Eventually they get married. It's not cut and dry, or they become gay as like a form of self-defense. Like, it gets really complicated for them. The bad guys really have to fucking struggle because they do get picked by natural selection. Natural selection to be loved. Right? When you're such a shitty dude, but you can't escape female grasp anymore, you have been shamed to death already. There's nothing to talk about anymore. Like, I literally have the real class clown. I'm not the class clown. I'm a class weakling. But the class clown surrounds himself with women and just, like, enjoys gossiping. Like, what the fuck, dude? That is nasty. But the way he enjoys gossiping, he fucking spills most of that shit into the open. Women actually don't like spilling gossip. I noticed. Right? They like to approach things eventually. They like to think that they will muster some strength to come up to you and say something to you that is meaningful instead of just gossiping, instead of just spilling the gossip. The guy was just like fucking bawling around of like, wow, I'm in the middle of all this gossip and people are talking about you and I hate you actually because they're not gossiping hard enough or whatever the fuck is going on, or they talked about me way too much or something, right? The fucking class clown openly said he hates me, even though again I'm at disadvantage. I'm just some fucking guy, right? Like, you're not supposed to be in bad terms with me, but eventually I was able to hate him too. So eventually I returned the favor. If you go back in time, every bit of experience matters. And the fantasy allows you to go back in time and sort of fix the past or extract constant value from the past. If you don't have fantasy, like most of the fucking idiots out there, you'll just forget. You'll forget most of the things. Most of the faces, people, you gotta keep track of them as well. Fantasy allows you to keep track of people that you might care about. Right? I was able to track one of my classmates that married and divorced. And I'm like, wow, that's interesting. If we ever talk one day and you fantasize of like, what would be the scenario if you like really like her, it could be a pretty sweet moment. Like, even fantasize of like, if she's nice, she allows you to stay in her home. Just walk around, see what it's like to live in luxury, you know, give you a tour, and you're like good friends all of a sudden. This shit is not outlandish to think about. And at the same time, that with that girl, like, there were actually a couple of adventures in the first place that just, it sort of naturally formed. Eventually, I had to work with her, and she almost like, afterwards, after we enter high school, she was always sneakily close to me. She was always kind of chipping a few interactions here and there. Like, that was fascinating. She had nowhere else to sit. And I was almost like a good wall, a good backup to fill in an empty chair so she doesn't have to sit with anyone and like be overly exposed to scrutiny or something. Because she didn't really have friends. It's you start noticing these things. Eventually, you start piecing together these stories that fuel your fantasies, but at the same time, you understand more about reality too, because those things are relatively real. And one of the most like fantasy fueling thing about that girl is that I didn't go there. I didn't go with the class to a certain event, and all of a sudden she's like drawing something that resembles me, a person using computer. It could be anything, but it could also be me, because I was missing from the whole thing, and maybe she missed it too. It's so weird. Eventually you start feeling that women do incompetent things to the point where you actually don't know what they're really feeling for you. Right? They're just sort of avoidant. They're avoiding love because they know how much it's a game changer. Often women even pick a bad partner first just to see how it goes down, just to feel safe that relationship will fall apart eventually. Right? They're not there to save the guy. They're just there to not feel alone, so they're gonna pick a shitty dude, gonna spend time with him. The relationship falls apart, she can move on to the next guy. No big deal. Right? Some women just use that privilege, they get all the attention, they get all the acceptance. It's fine. And some women just simply hide all their feelings for way too long, way longer than it's beneficial to. But it is what it is. And it's true because NPCs are very, very silent under capitalism. Again, they want to look competent. Anything complicated can screw them up. Anything complicated can be like, oh, what are my parents gonna say? Right? My parents ain't gonna like that guy at all. You know, they have to talk themselves out of it, out of these weird decisions. And again, I like to think that I was like contributing to the divorce. Uh, and maybe divorce is still ongoing. You know, you see something and it's like, can I take the credit? Can I take the credit to the point where I'm trying to take credit from one of the biggest celebrities altogether? Can I just take credit? If you can, you should. That's the beautiful thing. And the fantasy will also, you know, give you some dark tones to poke around if your esteem collapses or not. There's always going to be the dark side that you have to consider, that you have to accept as a trade-off. In a relationship, you take the good and the bad, unfortunately. You also have to assume that people are scaredy cats, right? Anything can get hacked in the end of the day. Their phones can get hacked. Like, their little bit of incompetence can destroy their whole lives if they're not careful. Men are not as careful as women. Men get competence the hard way. Women don't have room for error, unfortunately. Their nudes cannot leak. You must understand. Unless they're very pretty, then fuck it. Yeah, so you have to keep traveling. Eventually, an NPC is gonna be like, ah, fuck it. This can't be that bad. But women, unfortunately, take things incredibly slow, and they want to process every little thing, which can look like mental illness in the end of the day. Because they're so nasty when they take so much time to process everything. When they cocoon themselves into silence, you simply can only pray that they're gonna snap and level up. Alright? That you're gonna grow out of the brain rot, you're gonna grow out of the teenage tantrums, you're gonna be able to have at least reasonable conversation, maybe even meet each other one day. And the class meeting, fuck that shit, right? They kind of just like found out that I'm a competent person, and I guess they're just gonna like figure shit out individually, on an individual basis. Right? If anything interesting happens, it happens because of me, right? And then it will be worthwhile reuniting, or it's going to be worthwhile reuniting to take a piss on me. I don't know. It is what it is. Right? They will have to still muster the courage, the big chungus of class, the class circus, basically, because it contains the class clown. They will have to muster the energy to go ahead and figure out a way to make a class reunion anyways. Just to make something happen. Just to reenact the same bad parts as well. But again, people are so avoidant of bad things that it takes so much time for them to motivate themselves to do it. They can easily do the good things, like go to college, even though it can be secretly a trap. Right? They don't have to actually think about it. Everyone's going to college. They will go to college too. Even though it is its own natural selection of scummy behavior of humans, right? If something is too popular it's predatory eventually. Another thing is you gradually grow into different level areas. You have great hopes of like making it in your country, in other countries worldwide, right? The focus tends to shift quite a bit, and the local people are not as engaging anymore for you to worry about them. You crafted the fantasies, they live their lives. It's not that deep anymore, right? But I think you still have to be hopeful that things turn around and the person is gonna try to make something out of the broken past, right? Like, why would they keep you in the dark about everything? They should actually release most of the past conflict as if it's a zoo animal, let alone abandoned zoo animal. Nobody actually cares, so might as well do something with it. Eventually, women will encourage themselves to go through the blocked people's list and double check what they should do about it. How are they approaching the situation? There could be a trend. You never underestimate the power of the trend to wake women up and be like, check your blocked people's list. Check how many people you blocked. Just that alone of like bragging about how many people you blocked. I can brag about how many people I blocked on YouTube, right? Just that alone can turn into a trend. You also have to fantasize it. You can fantasize out loud because you never know who's actually spying, who's stalking you, basically, who's gonna like lit the fires. You don't know which fires are gonna work and which ones won't. When you lit a fire, you have no idea. It's all random. Either the fire is going to be put out or not. That's the luck factor of capitalism. Some people get lucky, but they become very arrogant, thinking that they can just take all the credit for the fires. Whatever you did, it's not automatically good. You release a new product that people want, it's not automatically good thing. Taking the credit and feeling good about yourself is a weird thing to do. We invent AI and we obviously don't know is it good or bad, because it does just as many good things as bad things. My mom is really slow. Okay. Kind of sets the tone for an average person of how much they can improve themselves. You can fuck up your world really quickly. And now you have to become beneficiary of the government to stay afloat. Fantasy keeps you going, basically. It keeps you motivated to do things. Like, you want to build games, you want to build applications. Building applications in general is pretty insane. Again, you don't know when you're going to invent the next social media, the next Facebook, whatever, right? And all of a sudden, you're in control of social media, but as cute as it sounds, still have to be responsible too. I just kind of recently picked up of like, instead of focusing on narcissists, psychopaths. Alright? Be more aware of psychopaths, and they do one thing in particular. They give you responsibilities. They sneak responsibilities into your life to try and fucking crack you, basically, to try and make you slip. So they will introduce you to their friends. but in a way that makes you more responsible. That's the fucking dead giveaway of you're dealing with a psychopath. They could still lie and not introduce you to your friends, to their friends. But yeah, narcissists don't introduce you at all. They just think about themselves. They're just fucking stuck like that. And it's a painful situation. Because they don't even have the fucking capacity to introduce you to their friends. They wouldn't even know how. They prefer being shy like that. So, my friend group, my outside of school friend group was basically orchestrated by a psychopath in the end of the day. Even if you tried. I was taking a break, Ace. Eventually there's gonna be a rich versus poor matrix. Alright, delusion versus illiteracy. Because you can always go to library, at the very least, to learn things. Learn about people. Just dominate library. Even if you have nothing going on in your life. Right? But most importantly, the idea of fantasy comes from rich people. Rich people have nothing else to do but to contribute to fantasy. And poor people have nothing better to do than to acquire the said thing. This is basically the biggest exchange network. I mean, you have to think of internet as being the biggest thing. The world looks extroverted. You can travel anywhere with a car, I guess. You can buy anything. But when people start traveling, I think the illusion of fantasy breaks down to where, like, is it really that fun to travel? I think it's almost like the most fun thing is to be single. You know, because you can continue living ever-evolving fantasy. And as a poor person, you're always trying to become rich. It's also a never-ending fantasy that bars you from entry over and over and over again. Continually denies you entry. And you cannot make drastic changes about yourself. You can only change one thing at a time and try again. And hope this time it's gonna crack. The system's gonna crack. And you'll at least get to the balance area where a lot of rich people also want to be. They want to feel balanced. They want to feel normal. That's technically where life picks up speed. Being rich is a role play. Being poor is simply an absence of things, of abilities, of opportunities. While being rich, you're role playing, but you're not actually like enjoying anything. You're just flexing the fact that you can have it. You're not actually investing into the meaning of it. You're just testing how many things you can have, how many things some money can buy, basically. Life only happens when you balance those things out. And despite there being less rich people than poor people, women try to average out everything. Women try to equalize everything. And they pull down. They pretend to be rich. Alright? Most women pretend to be rich. That's how you have to treat them. They pretend to be rich because they think they're gonna end up with a rich person in general. But at the same time, it's easy to be rich when attractiveness alone can buy you things. Right? attractiveness alone can pay the bills. Crazy enough. And again, you can read women as if they give you a fantasy of something, because reality is probably not that sexy anyways. Reality is usually pretty brutal, so both sides, relatively speaking, should be afraid of collapsing and making moves to the point where there is this gay mania. You can hide yourself and become unattractive in an instance of like, no, I'm too gay for this relationship. You know, it's the magical I have a boyfriend script, but for everyone. Because you don't have to actually have anything, you just have mental illness, I guess. Hey, mental illness is not an insult. Sometimes it's a tool, apparently. Because you can do that, or you can just be honest, right? That also works. It's just people don't want to be honest, funny enough. They think it's too painful. It is what it is. Again, fantasy relates to delusion and also mental illness to some extent. So you only have a limited capacity of how much you can actually consume, technically speaking. You have to be able to hide the delusion. You have to be able to hide the incompetence of yourself, because when you're consuming fantasy, you're actually not being productive in the end of the day. I don't remember Goku making me productive, but okay. Only if I exercise, maybe I can think of Goku. That's about it. Just because you have a fantasy of a better version of yourself, it could be too fantastic of a version and impossible to actually chase in a real life. You have to know how much to consume of certain material in general, because a lot of it is fantasy. A lot of what people do is fantasy. Even Minecraft friendships, do you think they're more real or more fake? What do you guys think? Just people hanging out in a certain place, does that make it real or fake? Because any child can do it. What children can do is probably not as real as people want to believe. Just like everyone grows up and all of a sudden friendships fall apart and people stop acting like friends, or rather like children. It usually is the same, one and the same thing. People stop playing with each other, and grown adults can't play with children. It's just heavily forbidden. So all of a sudden, there's multitude of factors that bring fantasy on the table. Of like, that's it. This is the survival mode. You have to turn on your brain and send it into the dream world as fast as possible, because, you know, the real world fucking sucks under freedom. When everyone feels free to be able to shame you and attack you, and there's no real consequences to that, and no one is watching, basically, if there's no consequences, no one's collecting data and warning the person that they're doing the wrong thing. If everyone is just capable of doing that, well, unfortunately, the world isn't that fun to deal with. Real world is not that fun. Because not only you need freedom, but you need to balance it with control. Then you can make up your own reality. If you don't have enough control over your freedom world, and it's not satisfying. Usually control is being stripped away from you because you don't have enough money. But there is no way to get it back, because if you try to get money, you just enslave yourself, losing control anyways. There's no way to, like, easily balance this out to where you have control and freedom at the same time. Control becomes this, like, fucking carrot on a stick moment. Right? You really wanted it, but you can never get it. You're free to go anywhere. You can be freely homeless in any country. But to have control is a much more difficult task. AI is probably flipping the script. You will have control, but you will not have freedom. You will be bothered of, like, well, you can't do this and you can't do that. You're going to be constantly disqualified for using too much AI in a certain way. And AI itself is just like, well, you have to keep iterating until you find what you like. It gets pretty weird. I think the script will flip a little bit in that sense, where you'll have to earn your freedom. And first of all, you'll have to prove that you are not AI somehow. That's annoying. That is now a constant accusation. And again, you can actually feel the female mind in play. Female minds actually accuse you of a lot of things. That's what creates fear. If they do it too much, of course, the absolute degenerates. But they can't help but do this because they want to feel safe. So accusing everyone of insane things, or just digging into the shady past and being really outraged by every little fucking suspicious thing, that's what women can't help but do. That's their fucking politics. In fact, female politics have the same problem. Everything has the same problem. They feel free to do whatever they want, to create whatever the fucking weird-ass politics they want. They have pride about their weird-ass freedom politics, but they can't have control at the same time, because that would mean actually knowing how to debate, knowing how to offer real solutions to real problems. That's crazy. And also influencing men directly, interacting with men directly, because you can win them over into your side. It doesn't have to just be gender-based, where women lean left and men lean right just because gravity. You create that sort of fucking gravity. So in desperate attempt to control, you will eventually just devolve into like a Trump bad syndrome, because you can't find anything else to do to attract people. So you just do the basic shit that you know. You just accuse a person, right? You devolve into exposing your entire strategy out of pure desperation that you cannot control the situation. But you really want to. Everyone wants to. Until AI flips the script and nobody wants to control the situation because they might be in front lines to get, you know, an accident happen to them. Yeah. All of a sudden, nobody will want to be a president. Nobody will want to be even involved in the voting process to some extent, or talk about politics. Very likely. They will have control, but they will not feel free to engage. You have all the freedoms and no control, and that's what we're exchanging. In the end of the day, that's what life is. Life is technically just a fantastic experience. A lot of shit happens in your head anyways. and you don't want to rush it. Rich people can rush it and realize they're going too fast. Poor people, they can't rush it. But they sometimes just accept that they will never get out of poverty. They're not like taking notes and understanding that every skill they earn or learn, everything they accumulate has value. Some things have more value than others. They choose to ignore. They're just like, well, I can buy beer rights now. Let me be drunk and be upset that I'm poor. Right? Life is a fantastic experience, but you have to embrace this idea. Anything is possible, and a lot of things are happening generally. There's a lot of evil things happening. There's a lot of good things happening. You're in a never-ending fight to destroy as much evil as possible and collect the rewards as a result. Love will always end up grounding us and dispelling all the bullshit. It's natural selection. You lose. You lose, you pathetic human. There's another weird thing about humanity is if people were continuing to lose, most of us, like, we would not be able to make babies. We would not be able to reproduce. Humanity tends to win overall. Okay? The only question is how big can you win? And sure, when does it actually happen? When is winning even trending to begin with? Because again, a lot of people right now are upset about capitalism, but then still a lot of people are clinging onto capitalism because they don't want it to collapse. They're uncertain of what the future holds, even though the future is presenting itself. It's very unstable times. Perhaps only very careful people can actually navigate in the apocalypse terms and still find love, because normal people are unstoppable in those terms. You cannot steal a man's fantasy, alright? You can strip away a lot of things that a man can have, but you cannot steal his fantasy. Under capitalism, that's the hardest thing to do because everyone focus on material goods. They cannot peek into your mind. They cannot read your mind, and they don't even bother doing that. They don't even bother doing that when I express myself, express my mind. It's like, read it, watch my videos. Don't you want to? I give it to them. They still don't want it. Sometimes I do that thing where I just pull the most outrageous thing at the very end. Unfortunately, porn does play a role, especially exposing women even more. You have to expose them properly. But it also shows where fantasy became more powerful than reality, because in reality you have to chase women and you don't know if they're gonna give the relationship to you and help you explore what sexuality is. Here you can just fucking see it. See it to the point where fantasy is so strong, you shouldn't actually need to chase women. Women want to be chased because it's such a fucking manipulative thing to do. But really powerful men choose not to engage with this. The thing about women, and the reason why women are such chase objects, is because they give you a certain portion, a certain amount of food. They might trigger your interest, but the moment you start actually chasing after them, eventually they will pull the plug, right? There's a certain end point to all of this. And it keeps happening all the time. At some point you will reach the end where they feel uncomfortable, they don't want to do anything anymore. You will find the breaking point inside every relationship. And have to keep moving and finding food somewhere else, which can be pretty devastating when people are free to also like add any amount of pain into the process, or just completely reject you the very first moment and give you nothing. That is, technically freedom abuse. To think that someone else's like attention shouldn't bother you, because again, you're probably being accused of something, but you're not able to actually argue your way out, even though every woman gets to accuse you from their own perspective. It's like they're doing the heavy lifting, but it's not like that. All right, someone already did that. Why would you repeat it? Why would you repeat the process? Because the system is broken. The system does not acknowledge such nonsense right now. Doesn't try to save you from repeated abuse. Doesn't, and most importantly, doesn't try to save people from hard work, which is another topic I probably haven't talked about properly. Like how much hard work is just glorified, even though it shouldn't be. Anyways, so you guys, and if hard work is glorified and all of a sudden everything is hard, everything you do in life is hard, intentionally, everything is cranked to the highest difficulty for no good reason, until it collapses. Anyways, see you guys next time. I hope you learned something, because life can actually be better under understanding what resource matters the most. What resource, rather, is the most stable and cannot be stolen from you. Bye-bye.